Welcome to Peacebuilding Initiatives with José Barzola. Peacebuilding Initiatives are collaborative ways of developing healthy, positive relationships via dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, exploring ways to shift our own perspective to build compassion and empathy within our communities. Thank you for joining us today. On today's episode, we have Lisa Seikai Darcy, who's the founder of Share Your Mana, SYM, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting marginalized communities, including those experiencing homelessness, mental illness, and addiction. With nearly 4 decades of experience in advocacy community work across the United States and internationally, Lisa works to bridge the gap between the housed and unhoused through education, legal advocacy, and hands-on support. Share Your Mana's unique approach includes an advocacy committee made up of people with lived experience, and Lisa was instrumental in a successful legal challenge with the UCLA in 2023 regarding civil rights violations in Hawaii. She also coordinates a weekly women's mentoring group for incarcerated individuals on Maui. Lisa combines her background in psychology, sociology, and Zen chaplaincy to create holistic solutions that restore dignity and promote healing. Lisa, your work reflects deep commitment to both individual empowerment, systemic change. Your approach blends compassion with practical advocacy, creating a space for those who often silenced or overlooked. What stands out is your ability to weave together your diverse experiences from grassroots efforts to legal challenges while grounding your work in spiritual and evidence-based practices. This unique combination allows you to not only address immediate needs, but also shift broader societal perceptions and policies. Thank you for your focus on dignity, respect, and autonomy for marginalized communities in both inspiring and essential in driving long-term transformation. And it is really quite an honor to be with you today and share this moment. So thank you for this opportunity. Um, but we'll get into the conversation. And if I may have missed anything, this is actually a little portion that I just let you share anything else that I may have not covered before we get into the questions.
No, I can't. I mean, this is such a thank you for Mahalo Nui
Yeah.
Loa for being here, and to the audience and to anybody who is able to glean anything from our conversation. I really, really appreciate it. You did say something that I don't usually say. You said it in a different way. So I just, as I was listening to you, I heard autonomy. And that's a really, really important word in the work that's done here. So I just want to say thank you for using the word autonomy. And it is a very much overlooked word and action. Um, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, there's
Thank you.
we can find
Yes,
lots of things to
yes.
talk about.
Wonderful. Well, so you've been in the advocacy field for nearly 4 decades. Could you share a little bit about like what first inspired you to get involved in this type of work?
Yeah, and maybe one day we can meet Ted Kotchen. I've always been fascinated by people and behaviors. And to me, life is just a set of equations. Um, and I did pretty well at physics. I did have a little hiccup in chemistry. But yeah, I've always understood equations and not necessarily in a way that makes sense on paper, but in behaviors. And so when I was in college, and for anybody who's gone through undergrad, I had a really dynamic professor who I was a sociology class, and she would bring people in different agencies into the class, and we would actually go to different places. And she brought in a group of people from a program, and they were called Clubhouse, that's in quotes, model program. And there was one in New Jersey because I went to undergrad in New Jersey and at Rutgers. And she brought in people who were living and managing mental health, major mental health, significant mental health problems and illnesses. I was so taken aback by them sitting in the front of the class. I'd never met anyone who had formally said, "Oh, I have schizophrenia. Oh, I have major depression. Oh, I have that." It was not, people didn't say that like they said, "Oh, yeah, I've got high blood pressure." And it was so matter of fact. I was so excited that somebody was naming this and I didn't need to be afraid of it or fear it, and that it was solvable. Of course, that I followed them after the class, like almost literally back to the program, and I begged the program uh, supervisor to be a volunteer, and he said, we don't have volunteers. And I said, well, you've got a trash can. And he's like, yeah, I got a trash can. I said, well, I can empty your trash can. I was like, I can do something. I was like, he was like, oh, he's like, you're going to be a problem, aren't you? So I ended up actually getting hired part-time, and that was thanks to Ted Kotchen. He spoke, and he spoke about how he had had, quotes, and this is in quotations, a normal life. And when he was I think his late teens, he ended up coming down and developing schizophrenia, ended up with restraining orders from his family, living out of his car, really pushed out of society. And I thought, God, I'm part of that problem. I'm pushing people out and I don't even know it because I'm not finding a way for them to be in it. And I thought, if I'm not finding a way for people to be in something, I'm actually the problem. And so that's really kind of how I got into all this, is when I look at these issues where people are not able to either communicate, or there isn't the path for them to recover or regain their life or anything, I go, well, there's got to be an equation that can resolve this and can bring us all into more of a level of peace versus conflict. So that's kind of
Well, thank you. Thank you so
the
much.
short.
Yeah. So you in the bio shared how you had moved to Maui about 20 years. Tell us a little bit about your decision to move to Maui 22 years ago. How did that transition influence the way you engage with communities and advocate for change?
I yeah, how did I end up here? I was working in New York City as an international trainer at the clubhouse model. I worked at for kind of worked my way up and down the East Coast working at these programs and gaining, larger opportunities to each one. I don't know how many hundreds there are worldwide. And I ended up in New York City working for a gentleman by the name of Ralph Bilby, who has recently passed, was a dear mentor to me, akin to like Pono Shim.
Yeah, I'm so
For
sorry for your
yeah,
loss.
no, for the well, it's all gain, because now is the real, they mentor you and now you take the mantle, so you go.
No
So
pressure.
no,
You're
it's
doing
like
great.
it's they gave us everything we need, and now
Yes.
we just take it forward. So I met colleagues from we had colleague groups that came from around the world, and we had a group from Hawaii, and yeah, so we became instant friends, and they were like, come to Hawaii, come to Hawaii. And I was like, I don't surf. Look at me. I get heat stroke. I was like, this is not a good match. And they worked on me and they worked on me. Yeah, and then I flew out and I saw the incredible lack of education and lack of opportunities for people who had mental illness. And so I kind of took a leap of faith. And at that time, the state of Hawaii was being sued by the federal government, the Felix Decree, and they were responsible for providing services in all of the counties and all of the islands. For people who are not familiar with how diverse Hawaii is, and each county is an island and it's very different. And Maui County actually has 3 islands that it's inhabited. Anyway, it was so striking to me how little opportunity people had and how people were suffering needlessly, that I said, okay, I'm going to try this. And I moved to Maui to work with some of the other clubhouse programs. I was under a clubhouse program, and it was my charge to lift it was a small program that had some of the philosophy intact, and it was my job to grow that. And so I came out here to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for taking I mean it's definitely not a easy transition, but I think you took a good stride. You look for folks to build community, and more than anything, I commend you for the modeling that you do. I greatly appreciate that. And once more, the lessons learned from those before us, our mentors, and how they continue to guide us nowadays. So thank you for that. A little bit about on Share Your Mana. In 2017, you founded Share Your Mana. Just would love to learn about the driving force behind creating it, and how did you come to realize this is the right way to channel your work?
Wow, yeah. So you're hitting it right on the head. It didn't go as I planned when I moved here and brought the philosophy, which is it's person-centered versus medically centered. And to make that really easy to understand, the driving philosophy in Clubhouse is that the staff is always overwhelmed. You need to need people because people need to be needed. If you are a top-down medical model and you just prescribe something to somebody and they have to go do it, there's no connection. And so the recovery model is peer to peer. It's as a staff person, I had way too many people on my caseload to do everything. So I actually had to help create community. So as a community, we solved things. And that also took away the real stigma of I have to hide my problem because we would share all of our problems. And it was my job to facilitate us sharing our common needs so that the burden became lighter on everyone. So there's some real clear philosophical pieces that I have seen. I've watched people who were back in the day, back on the mainland, where there were incredible, they were incredibly beautiful psychiatric institutions, and they were literally warehouses. They may have been beautiful and looked like Princeton University on the outside, but on the inside, they were warehouses. I've watched people who were discarded, thrown away, completely get their lives back and become taxpayers, get jobs, function to a degree where there's no way they would need the institution. That also comes with the understanding that people need many, many tries because they have to learn about where their barriers are and where their challenges are. And so there was never a what you try it once and you fail. There was no concept of failure in Clubhouse philosophy. There's this concept of we're working together to move forward. No concept of failure. No, one or two strikes and you're out. That doesn't make any sense. That's never gonna keep encouraging people, at least in this context. So that was really important to me. And so when I moved here and I was really embedded in seeing how successful that was, and having people, of course, as you said, develop their own autonomy where they had become dependent. I was like, I've got to, this is where kind of some of the spiritual aspect of this is we have to take ourselves out of the way. And I've had really great supervisors to help train how I can take myself out of this so that the other person can walk into space and walk into their own recovery plan, create their own recovery plan. And sometimes I don't understand it or it doesn't make any sense. And I go, okay, well, we'll try it. My job is to keep the guardrails, to keep the person safe. But there were no programs on Maui that would embrace this. And when I was doing this here on Maui with the clubhouse, it was not, it was embraced by the Department of Justice, who thought this was great. But once the Department of Justice said, you're doing a great job, and they packed up and they left town, it still hadn't been embodied by the local kind of supervisors. And so I bounced around to different programs and I worked with different agencies here and did my best. They did their best. And I realized that this is a piece that's missing from every agency. It's missing from all of the recovery program. These things are not one size fit all. They aren't just one try. And you're going to need somebody who's with somebody for years to build that trust before they're maybe, it's like bamboo can grow under the ground for how many years before it sprouts up. Someone's got to be the soil to give that person all of the space that they need and or the skill to have actually encourage that when you think it's ready, and to push people and pull people and to get pushed and pulled myself, and to develop those kinds of relationships. So that's really, I like, there's nobody doing this here. It's not really being fully embraced in the capacity that I felt like it needed to be in the other agencies. So I thought, I'll strike out on my own and I'll try this and we'll see what happens.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for just we get so comfortable in our routines, and so to lean into that discomfort and grow from that experience, and just, every experience in life is an opportunity to evolve and to add more tools to the toolkit. And although it may not seem clear at the moment where the path is leading you, I think it's
Mm.
when you know in your gut it's the right thing to do you really question it? So thank you for doing that. Um, the advocacy committee you created with lived experiences is so unique. What inspired you to include the voices of those who are often excluded from these kinds of discussions, and how has that shifted the conversation around homelessness and mental illness?
Well, you actually said it just a couple sentences ago, is someone's got to lean into the discomfort. And that's not an easy thing to do. And you really need to be trained and have somebody teach you. And whether it's generationally, whether it's Kapuna or, whoever who's been through and have learned really strong methods and have trust, or whether, you again, like the model that I was trained in is universal. It doesn't have a color, it doesn't have an age, it doesn't have you don't need to see, you don't need to hear. It's a model that embraces every human being where they're at. And the individuals that I'm working at have an enormous amount of discomfort. And yet I think I find that the agencies have even more. There's this perception that everybody who's in these conditions, and while they are inhumane and absolutely atrocious, um, are almost like infantilized, and yet, and then the agencies are kind of like the ones who we're the ones that are going to take care of you. I think I recognize that as not working for everyone. And one of the things that um, I am learning and getting better at is really leaning into the discomfort in order to name it, in order to embrace it, in order to just sit in it, not judge it, not make a decision about it, not to put my 2 cents in, until I'm asked or until that trust is built, and just listen and redirect people, but also not let them flop around like a fish out of water in it. You got to know when it's time to hear it, and then not keep creating a pathway that is not going to move on. And so I think just really leaning into discomfort is so valuable and under recognized and under trained. It's really undertrained. Many of the people I work with are, it'll turn out all right. We'll do okay. And that's not for any of us to say. A lot of times it doesn't turn out well. And they know this. Everyone knows this. And you know it when you say it, even when when people say it. If you really are honest, you're like, it doesn't, because there's so a lot of these pathways are closed off. However, when we connect in this really genuine and authentic way, I don't make promises I can't keep. And people do know, if my track record is extraordinarily trustworthy, whether I have an answer or not, whether it goes forward or not. You just keep leaning into the discomfort, and that's where I find real peace exists. Just in that really small moment of acknowledging the discomfort, but not even just like in a group saying, "Oh, I understand, you're uncomfortable," but really being like, "Is that like, does it feel like this?" And and they're like, "Yeah." And when someone in those moments is where there are these incredible bursts of peace, and you can't see them. I mean, I guess you could put a color to it or something. It's in those moments that are seemingly innocuous, which just always somehow energize me to keep going. This is, I've never made money in my life. I will die very, without the the American dream, because I was like, it was never my dream. I don't even know where that came from. That doesn't make any sense to me. So these are the moments that are I just like get really super excited about. And I watch how people's bodies and their minds respond. And to me, helping them find peace, even in these little moments, and helping providers and helping family members. I gave a mom permission the other day to just be a mama bear. She's like, I'm trying to do this, and I said, listen, I'm just gonna interrupt you right now. Just be mama bear. You're mama bear. Don't try to be the provider. Don't try to be the person who's doing the interventions. I said, the systems are not working the way we need them to work, and you're trying to do all of it. Don't. Just be mama bear. That's who you are, right? And she was just like, like wanted to cry. I was like, cry, because you just be you. And that's all, it's good enough. It's good enough. Anyway, those are seemingly like kind of fluffy. It might feel a little fluffy to some people, although to me, it's like the most grounding. It's almost like charnel grounds in building trust and building. Maybe I do have a little autonomy, and maybe I do have a little drive. And that's where the advisory committee is so incredible, that they are the ones who are really leading the conversations. And that's, to me, the way it's meant to be. And I'm there to give people as many options as possible. It's their job to lead, not me. I'm not there to lead them, and I'm not here to speak for anybody. It's my job to just give them as many healthy options as possible. And they're this extraordinary group that are speaking up and really changing the way this community approaches this work.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for, you know, giving that mom that moment to just be the mama bear that she needs to be. We're constantly juggling so many hats, so many responsibilities. That opportunity to just take a step back, reflect, just
Mhm.
be focused on one is so needed and healing in so many ways. So thank you for that. Um, so, Share Your Mana's work combines both on-the-ground efforts and legal advocacy, like your work with the ACLU in 2023. How do these two aspects of your mission complement each other in creating real change?
I never saw this coming. As a child, I was very shy, and even as a young adult, and even into being an adult, very shy. And to think that it, at one point I would be facing off against, the people who are supposed to protect you, like these sheriffs and all these people, and their job is to harm people, not protect them. Like when they move and they do sweeps. And I understand this. I never thought in my life I'd, be saying, listen, what you're doing, and I don't want to be you. I would quit your job. I wouldn't be able to do the job. I can't do that job. I wouldn't do it because I'm just not aligned with the value system involved. And I never thought that we would be leading and have the ability to partner with the ACLU. I became an ACLU member like in college or something, but long, and I was just like, oh, aren't they, in quotes, if you can't, if you're just listening, aren't they great? And that's an us and them thing. They, um, when you witness harm, when I witness harm, I can't say you, it has to be I. When I witness harm, it's very, I want to solve it. I'm like, why does that need to happen? And so there was no way that I could be working with people and ignore sweeps and just say that's the way it is, which is what the majority of people do. And I understand it. I intellectually understand it. Um, understand it emotionally, how people compartmentalize and how you need to do that. I can't do that. And so even though I've been very shy, it's a much larger responsibility, kuleana, in life to say I can't be complicit. And so it's taken years and years and years to build the trust of the individuals who are being swept and being harmed, to say, listen, I think we actually do have a little control over this. I think your autonomy, now that you've established it, gives you your voice. And once your voice, we actually, whoever thought the United States justice system would be supporting us in an illegally occupied territory. So it's really kind of interesting. That's a whole nother dialogue, but yeah, to be able to document, and I was trained very clearly in documenting for Medicaid in the 80s and 90s, and you had to document everything so that you could get paid, which is another thing, is like every document. But it really served me well in telling people stories and understanding which pieces are going to be valuable in changing the trajectory going forward. And so that's been a combination of documenting times, dates, who's there, who's not there. So much of this work is about what's not there, not what's there. It's what's not there. And that lack of awareness in both agency and community has been the work of the advocacy committee and the advisory committee. And then, since we were able to really document all that was happening, the ACLU, and we have an absolutely amazing attorney, Wookie Kim, and his team. They were able to really say these are some very clear violations, and we believe we have a very solid opportunity to make change. And yeah, they've been able to navigate the legal system, and that's a whole nother very complex language that you have to learn. Yeah, they did it, but more importantly, all of this really has helped people to find peace in the conflict, and peace in, I do have a little control over this, and there are others going through this. I'm not alone. The original Clubhouse was philosophy was born out of WANA. We are not alone. When a lot of the Kennedy, they deinstitutionalized everybody in the 50s from institutions, and people were literally just like walking on the streets. They got together. That's how the first Clubhouse started, was people got together, started making food together in a church basement. We're not alone, and it's the same philosophy. This group, it's really uncomfortable to have your auntie or your uncle who's working with these agencies that are ticketing you or citing you, and yet you're going to go to court and challenge that. It's really, really, really hard. And yet, I believe it's the best for those who are giving the tickets. I believe it's the best for the community who doesn't understand this. I really believe it's the best for the individuals who are getting stuck in this system of incarceration unjustly, because they don't have other options and opportunities. And I do believe when you have options and opportunities, you absolutely will succeed. It's been my experience over and over. It's been a very long road here in Maui County. However, I do believe it's still possible, and whether it comes to fruition in my lifetime doesn't matter. What matters is that we meet those moments with as much respect and dignity for in whatever, whether it's in court, whether it's face to face with someone who's got bulletproof vests on, whether it's the person who is so traumatized they're just shaking and just holding them. Yeah, it's those incredible moments where you go, I actually, by being just a open person, I can do something about this. And I can. It's really, like I said, people say, how do you do this work? I'm like, how do you not do this work? It's like, it's freedom. It's like pure freedom.
That's just really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, so you work with individuals experiencing homelessness, addiction, mental illness. What do you wish more people understood about the complexities of these challenges?
Oh my gosh, what do I wish they understood? I wish they understood I've really never met anybody ever that didn't want to get better and didn't want to have a better life. And I experienced, when I first started doing outreach, people would just say, yeah, I'm fine. Everything is great. Everything is great. And people were polite to me. And I said, well, I'm actually going to try and develop this whole other program kind thing and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it involves maybe having this way different type of safe living. And so I use different language, not housing. If you're, if you can see, I'm doing quotes for housing because there's all of these images that come up with the term housing. If you're poor and you're going to get shoved, if you're a circle, you're going to get shoved through a square and it doesn't work. So I would just sit with people and bring coffee and or whatever they wanted. Always bring a meal. People are always hungry for something good that they like, that's anyway, I would just sit and say, help me design. If you were going to be my partner in designing something very different, and I would sit for sometimes 4 and 5 hours at a time with somebody. They would get so excited about the concept of redesigning something or just designing. Then I was like, this myth is really toxic that people don't want to improve their life. And I really had to work on using their people's language in the language that they use, and especially in Maui County too. The opportunity for having a higher education is very limited, and many times people are like, I don't know what that word is. And to me, it might be a pretty simple word that I use a lot because of the education that I've received. And I really had to started learning and people would help me understand. We'd be like, oh, and the pidgin word for that, the local language for that is this. I go, that, okay, that's it. So it was really also becoming a translator um, to get to how we were going to actually solve these in the system and out of the system. I try to approach everything with being in the system and out of the system and where do they meet. I don't know if that helps at all.
No, no, that definitely does. You're following the trail, which, with anything, I think if anyone's ever trying to understand the process, it's not just the beginning and the end, what's in between, and not just what's physically visible in between, but the nitty-grittiness and who are the people really making things happen and where are things getting stalled up. Because that's when you realize ways to navigate this process. Because there is no playbook or rule book for that, unfortunately.
No, but I do. The other thing I want really people to know is I do believe that with all the knowledge and experience that I have and everything I've seen, we are spending exorbitant amounts of money to not fix the problem. And, the average person, like I follow everything. So I read constantly. I listen to podcasts. I listen, anybody who says anything that's really interesting or different, I like, where did you get, like I follow I'm kind of like an investigative, I don't know, but I'm very, very curious. And that curiosity um has not, well, maybe I'm on like on my sixth life right now. I wouldn't trade it for a thing. That curiosity is what has blended all of this, and it comes from a place of really just being interested. And even though many times it's interpreted as being confrontational and not understanding, it's like um, I'm always just curious, and that's also one of the features of share your mana that I say to people is ask the question. If you don't understand something, ask the question. And even if the person has repeated it, tell them to use different words. Say, don't just repeat it in the same, like, I heard you. I still don't understand you, or don't say it louder because that doesn't mean I'm going to understand you either. I said, ask them to use different words. And again, that's about autonomy and agency, right? Like taking responsibility for not understanding and being curious. And that again, it led to the ACLU Hawaii Supreme Court decision where Maui County is clearly violating people's civil rights and putting people in harm's way. And I want people to know that the reason we did that was because we know there is a far more cost-effective way to do this, and that we are the solution. If you are not integrating this community, then you are not actively working towards a solution. And I think that's the biggest, again, it really rolls back to the way that Maui is set up is it's very top down, it's very kind of medical model. And it isn't it doesn't welcome that grassroots effort to really bring people in and let them give me a chance to fail. I say that all the time. They're like, I go, just give me the chance to fail. That's all I'm asking for. I was when I first was in the clubhouse, the bus system started, and I was training people who came to the program who had mental illness how to use the bus system. And my supervisor freaked out. And here in Hawaii, they say scolded. I was scolded, like, you can't teach people to use the bus. They could get lost. And I said, well, but yeah, but they could get to their job, they could get to their appointments, they could go to the beach. Like I think that's kind of a good trade-off. Like, and you're not really getting the buses doesn't really go that we have a very small bus system. You're not really gonna get that lost. But again, you can see how fear or change was so threatening and so um it was very fear-based versus these are all the good things that can happen. And none of that surfaced from this supervisor, which I found to be very limiting. And I said, okay, we're going to maybe have to take that conversation to another location.
Thank you. Thank you so much for just your honesty, humility, into lessons learned. And I'm hopeful there's, for others who want to do good work and sometimes get frustrated until like it just feels like like you said, there's so much money that's been put in, but you don't see changes, what's going on. And I think a part of it's also like it's not just basically putting or throwing money at an issue. You have to actively get engaged in the issues. It's easy to just I'm gonna donate, I'm gonna allow a certain part of a budget to do this, but if you're not on the hand seeing what's happening, it's very different work. And so and I think that's one of the things we strive and what we try to get across. And we use the word peace, and we try to get across to folks. It's like peace is actionable. Peace building, it's about actionable work. Social justice, is about actionable work. It takes hard work. Positive peace takes it's exhausting, but it's rewarding. It's about building community, and you don't build community by throwing money at it. No, you do it by devoting the time to it. That's really what it's about. So thank you for that. Could you dive a little deeper into how does Share Your Mana combat the myths and misconceptions around homelessness, mental illness through whether it's through education? Maybe share some examples of how this work has sparked change.
Well, again, excuse me, it was designed just to educate the community, and it has morphed into these incredibly dynamic experiences. I think some of the stuff that are quick hits of excitement that like in change that I was like, don't get too excited, it's just you is presenting in community association meetings. And we've been invited to attend community associations, and I've always offered community associations to have one of our panels come in and dialogue with community members. For a decade we've been active in, why aren't we using parking lots? Why aren't we using places? If the county and the agencies are refusing to actually provide safe sheltering places, then there's got to be places where people can go that isn't private property and isn't county property, where the private property is going to throw you off, and then the county is going to give you citations. It goes back to the basics of the United States of being a landowner and a non-landowner and being able to afford that. So we've always been interested in that space of understanding history, but more importantly, just touching people in the room. And if you don't touch somebody in a room, then I mean, I throw statistics. I'm done with statistics. I'm done, and then you get a new crowd in, they're like, well, tell us the numbers. I'm like, I can tell you the numbers, but what are you going to do with that? Like you said, it's about community building. And I think going to do presentations and having the panel who used to hide and run away. And even some people, when they met me, when I'd come, they'd run around the back of the car and avoid me because they're like, who is that? And can we trust her? And, she's just like all the rest. She'll come around and she'll drop something off, and then maybe she'll come back, maybe she won't. And to sit there and watch this panel of people with their life experiences talk to the community is really powerful. And it's powerful because you can hear pin drop during their presentation time. And it really dispels this myth of violence. There's such a myth of violence, and that produces fear. And so when people get to meet people as human beings before they get to meet them as the term homeless is, it's extraordinarily powerful. So we do speaking engagements anytime and anywhere we can. And I try not to do this is, I thank you actually for this time, because it's always about promoting everybody else's voice. And yet, I think it's really important for the philosophy of why and how. You're really probably the first person to inquire about that, which I'm really grateful for, because it is a very strong and powerful philosophy that is active. It's an active philosophy. It's an activated philosophy. So usually I don't go anywhere without an advisory committee member, because I want them to learn side by side with everything, and to feel the stress of answering a question. And there was like, you're so calm. I'm like, no, I'm sweating over here. It's like, this is stressful, but it's good, right? But doing those kinds of presentations and just being honest and having community members ask questions, and no question, every question is a good question, even. And of course, I try to manage expectations for the advisory committee and for the community. So before we go in, I'm like, the community's going to ask some questions that you're probably going to find offensive. And I said, and that's a normal and reasonable response. I said, however, you're now speaking for a larger group of people. So I want you to take a breath and understand they just don't know. They don't know. So speak to them like you are the teacher, because you are the teacher in the room. So be the teacher. Don't be the hurt, marginalized person. I need you to be the teacher. So we do that. And then of course with the community, I'm like, you got to like gain their trust in order to say, any question will produce something of benefit. So please ask any and all questions. So I really think that that's a really important piece of this, and something to continue to model our speaking engagements. And we are planning planning a conference which will be coming up, and you will definitely get an invitation to. Yeah, those kinds of pieces, along with doing a lot of the video. I've done enormous amounts of video taping on a social media platform, which I'm really not good at. I only know how to do like one thing. It's been extremely powerful to the point where press from Honolulu have gotten involved, because they've watched it and they said, well, what's going on? Why are you doing all of this? And so I've been able to explain to them why I'm using social media, which isn't my preferred method at all. I am not adept at it. However, it has been an incredible ally and an incredible friend to our work. So thank you to anybody who follows Share Your Mana and learns. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for that. And for those listening, uh, you can definitely just, I know you're on Facebook, you're on, are you on Instagram? No, I think.
I
There's like
have the
so many
thing, but I don't
platforms.
really know how to use it. Yeah.
Well, we'll put it in the summary of this, all the different ways to connect with the organization, most definitely. So, and thank you for providing that voice, and really, literally providing their voice to the outer world. So, um, we you talked a little bit about, you studied chaplaincy, at Upaya Institute and Zen Center. It appears as though there's a delicate balance between spiritual care and evidence-based social work. How do you blend these elements in a way that it respects both the individual's autonomy as well as the community needs?
Kind of feel like I'm still a novice, and yet I have this great recognition that it's really, really important. I was born into a family that practiced Catholicism. It just didn't take, and I tell my mom to this day she did her best, but somehow I didn't. It just isn't in my fabric. There are pieces of it that are in my fabric, but not in the way that I've been instructed. And I think instructed is a really important word. It wasn't meeting the active needs of this peace building and this conflict resolution, which I think is central to spirituality and to religion. Um, and I haven't really never found anything. I'm not comfortable in organized groups again because I everything that I found is really just people kind of talk about it and they're not out there doing it. So all my everything that I've ever learned and studied really kind of always brought me back to this concept of Buddhism, and I am no expert. However, when I did learn about the Upaya chaplaincy program through a very dear friend and colleague who was a graduate and a mentor to me, she said, "Go check this out," and it was like it's like college. It's like master's degree learning for all that stuff inside of you that you know needs a pathway, and you know like you have to go learn um, like the equations. It's the equations. So it's just something as simple as learning to sense something versus feel it. And these are really important components when I do groups with I do quite a few women's groups is sensing something versus feeling and understanding that difference. And then how do you relate to sensing? How do you relate to feeling? When you start to untangle these, because they're tangled, and I've tangled them my entire life. When I started to learn these pathways, how to untangle, oh my gosh, the path, it gets so simple. It gets so easy. And so I very much I'd only completed 1 year. I haven't finished the program. But I have all of I even keep all the books with me at all times. They're like my kind of like my Bible of teachings, but they require you to take action steps for yourself, review your own posture, your own um, those moments of those intersections in life where you go, could that have gone differently? And if so, what would might have been a better way? And what language might have, or what silence might have been the piece that was missing? And so I think so this journey into kind of chaplaincy, which is to sit in the belly of the beast, to sit in that suffering, to sit in that discomfort, and to constantly be dedicated to training in that space, again, is extremely illuminating. And it it has helped me go from being a child to an adult. I think in a lot of ways I've been reactionary in my life, and it has helped me to become an adult in a situation versus just repeating childhood practices. So I've reviewed that, and it's been able, I think, to really move Share Your Mana into a place. Well, and again, to even take the name of Share Your Mana is I feel like I have to both apologize and have deep gratitude to the Hawaiian culture. Uh, I knew what it meant, but I wasn't brought up in it. And so there's fine lines between the depth of respect for that practice of understanding and learning mana, and I am a baby in it. I am a child in it. And I think there's the value in having that childlike eyes as well. And I think that's part of the practice of this is to look at every situation with as much skill as possible, and yet also keep that childlike. How could this, did it go well? Does everybody feel like it went well? If it went well, we can move on. If it didn't, what do we need to review, without pointing fingers, without harming. And yet there's also the delicate line of taking responsibility. And this definitely teaches, it has taught me how to take responsibility, and be more humble for harm that I have created. So it's kind of that blend. And chaplaincy is extremely valuable. And again, it's just full of all these moments of like freedom, like, oh my gosh, I got to call that person and tell them that's not what I meant. And I wonder if they, if that, I could see that could hurt somebody's feelings, and like, and just have those dialogues, and the person's like, what are you talking about? It's fine. Or yeah, I wish you might have waited before you said that. And so just to, again, build and honor relationship in those spaces. Chaplaincy has been extremely valuable.
Thank you. I um I always love the just because you study one thing doesn't mean you need to just pursue that pathway. And life ha is it's a beautiful journey, not really
Mhm.
just taking things on as they come through. And um you're picking up these, the lessons from the mentors, from the classes, studies, even though you talked about Catholicism, and I imagine there's skill sets from that you take on still today, which I think is wonderful. And I think just letting folks understand that even though what I'm doing right now may not make any sense, it will eventually. And it's your toolkit. You're bringing it back, and as a way to once more bridge that gap, connect, finding some common ground with so many different communities that you're engaging with. So thank you for providing that empowerment and mentorship yourself as well. Shifting a little to, and this is, I know, another deeper conversation, but you coordinate a women's branch of Ka'ipuha, a mentoring group for incarcerated women. Could you share a little about what you've learned from these women? How does that mentorship play a role in your healing process?
Oh my gosh, this is like, it's first of all, to set the tone for this is, if you've never gone into jail or prison, I really think that, like, going to a landfill, I think every kid should go to a landfill during their school, and watch and understand a landfill. I think every child should go into and hear the gate slam above the barbed wire. And the air that you're breathing on one side is the same air as you're breathing on the other, and yet your body will respond completely differently after that gate slams shut and you're locked into the barbed wire. It's really, like, again, I still feel like I'm a baby in this, and yet it is some of the most um, life affirming space that I've been allowed to occupy and to be partnered with. Um, Facilitating women who are incarcerated is very similar to facilitating the women who in parks who are unhoused and unsheltered. I think would actually be similar to if I went to a community association and facilitated a group with women there. There are just these unbelievably common themes that we just share. And to be able, again, to be seen, to be witnessed, um, to let go of suffering. It's a space which we start by doing, we have group agreements, which of course has confidentiality, unless someone's going to harm themselves or others. Um, and it is a space where there's no crosstalk. There's no rescuing somebody. when it's my job as a facilitator to keep everyone in the I statement. And it's my job to get them as close to the pain as they can get, where they can receive relief and support from the other women without causing further harm or, recycling trauma. And I don't think I've ever left a group in all the years where I didn't just every we check out at the end of every group, you check out sometimes with a word or a phrase, and it is always either just I think last week I was saturated. I checked out I give the group I like you decide how we check out, and so it was one word. And it was interesting because one of the women didn't know what saturated meant. And so I described, I said, like when you're doing the dishes and you get a really wet sponge and it's just dripping. I said, that's saturated. And I said, that's what I feel saturated and in all the best ways. And she goes, oh yeah, 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 I get it, I get it. And we coordinate as a team. It's again, it's not top down. I'm not there to teach anybody anything. I'm there to bring out the wisdom in each of them and myself as well. And to again manage expectations. So most of the work that I do all day long is managing expectations from whatever party I'm with. Not party like woo hoo hoo, but whoever's in the room, or maybe not even in the room. Yeah, so I think managing the expectations, and we have a great group that comes back and comes back. And we had a woman who made it even partially during COVID or the fires, because I wasn't able to go in every week, had 34 consecutive weeks. And since I'm in the jail and not in the prison side, we have people that turn over all the time. So for somebody to come for that many classes was really, truly inspiring. And again, they're inspiring others. So this work, again, to be seen and to have a space where they can get out of, there's all kinds of behaviors you're expected to maintain in the dorms and in your rooms, and to be able to come into a space where we can have some freedom with language and how they express themselves and confidentiality, and a lot of tears, a lot of tears, which again, to even have some person say I've never been able to talk about this, to me, like I feel like I could die. Like, like, okay, life is complete. Like if you could, just one person even gets a chance to expose something that's holding them down and feel lighter afterwards and not feel shamed. And yeah, the enormity of this is so sometimes like I get like thrown back in a moment. I'm like, this is like one of those moments you dream of having for yourself or others, and it's really exciting. It's really I I could do it a lot more if I had a lot more capacity. It's beautiful.
Well,
It's
thank
really fun
you.
to see women when they're on the outs, when they get released. And I tell them I can't come up to you because I have to act like I don't know you, because that's the rule. I said, but if you want to come up to me and give me a big hug, I would be thrilled. So I do. People see me and we connect, and I do help them when they're on the out. So it's nice too. And they're like, I had no idea, and I'm like, well, that's because I'm not supposed to bring me into you. It's about
Yes,
you, not me. So yeah,
thank
it's a
you.
lot of fun to grow these relationships.
What that's beautiful. That's beautiful. We talk about like building healthy, positive relationships. That's exactly what you're doing. And I just imagine just how exciting it must be for people to just like come up to you, just give you a hug, and for complete strangers to just be amazed. So thank you, thank you. How do you think the challenges faced by incarcerated women differ from those experienced by other marginalized groups? I know you went into a little bit, but what unique support systems are needed to address these needs,
Oh my
their needs
gosh.
specifically?
Yeah, it's become a warehouse. Jails are just warehouses for systemic failures. And what I mean by that is the amount of mental health needs, the amount of addiction recovery that's needed, The amount of even just like I sit here and I've become a translator to have to describe what the word saturated means. How is someone going to navigate through a life that through my lens is a normal thing? Or how are they going to, how are they not going to, how are they going to get their applications in when they don't know really what the word saturate? Imagine the amount of limitation that they're experiencing. And there are people get released with their paper bag, just on the street. They went in unhoused, or they went in a domestic violence, or they went in with mental health, or they went. And I am really not seeing where people are released with that warm handoff into something, or with, with anything more than a bag of a toothbrush, or, um, and they're not into sober housing. They're not into a mental health field. It's just this warehouse where um, people can thrive actually in some aspects of being in these spaces. And they're hungry to change. These women are hungry to change, and they are not getting rehabilitation. They aren't getting the opportunity for recovery. People are just being warehoused. And I want the general public to know that if we had more programs, and if, Share Your Mana, we're pretty much all volunteers. If we actually had places that were designated where people could go, and offices and ability to navigate, or people had a place where they could go stay, which met their need, not the circle through the square. Everyone's got to go directly into this program, or like we only have a handful of programs on Maui. We need dozens of different, if we had more of that, when we have more, then we'll see a change in the outcomes. And until there is an investment in transportation, and until there is an investment into somebody being released into a safe space, which maybe means maybe not being around. And it's so small. Maui's so rural. It's so small that if you have had encounters with somebody that has led you on a path that has been unhealthy, if that person is not getting the tools to navigate seeing those people again, or being in those circumstances, the likelihood of them falling back into it, of course, is great, because that's what you know. I mean, and I don't blame people. That's what all you know. If you're not given other tools and you're not provided with other resources, you're not going to get a different outcome. I'm not brilliant. These are just basic equations, and yeah, I don't know how to really make that happen more quickly, because I know I'm not supposed to have expectations, but I really would like to see that happen a little more quickly. Yeah, but they're willing. They do have the capacity to recover. Most of these women, I definitely do. And if not, they have the capacity to go much longer periods in recovery, versus, everyone wants everyone to just get better, or like, you get over the flu. It sometimes, mental health and addiction, it can take 3, 4, 5 times. But if you can get longer periods of recovery in someone's life, then their quality of life is way better. And of course, then the emergency cost for their needs is greatly reduced. I mean, these are just win-win situations.
Thank you. Um, so you've done a beautiful job building community. You also have this experience in policy change. As an advocate, you've worked with many policymaking organizations like the Maui Homeless Alliance and the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. How do you bring voices of those affected by these issues into the policy discussions, and how can the public help amplify these voices? So how can we assist?
I think you have to be courageous. I know that's not necessarily the answer that will always make sense, but this is what I'm going to tell you about courage is. I have been in many, many meetings that have appeared to be friendly, and they have not been friendly. There is a way it's going to be run, and someone's going to run it, and they have an enormous bandwidth to make change, and yet it's a very narrow agenda. You have to be courageous to keep bringing up the issues. You have to be courageous and be willing to say, this is what I see and this is what I know and this is what I'd like to see happen, and be corrected and saying, well, it is actually happening. You just didn't know about it. Or you have to be okay with saying what you see and what you need in these spaces. It has not necessarily been comfortable. And in many ways, there are many groups here on Maui, which I'm not invited to anymore, which my questions are not answered. They're shut down very, 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 very directly, just like um, places where you would think that we would be invited, where we are clearly not invited, and it is well known. So you have to be willing to form your new group of supporters and release this concept of this was my group that's going to help me, because this is really about new emerging leadership. It's about new emerging ideas. And just as you can't help a butterfly get out of its chrysalis, right? Because it won't have built up the strength to fly. So you can't help things out. You have to do the struggle is mine and mine only. The struggle is yours and yours only. And if you're not getting the result that you think is really the most beneficial, you have to keep speaking up. And if you can't get into the meetings or you're not invited, then you create your own. And that's, I think, where I was really nervous not being from Maui and not having, family here. I had no supports, and I really had to learn these lessons very directly, and that no one's going to come to rescue me or you. We're the ones we got to rescue ourselves in these situations. And there are a lot of other people that feel the same way, and they just don't know how to do it, which is where you got to bring grace and dignity and determination. And sometimes it's a very clear stance you have to take. Other times it's a sit in the back of the room, or sometimes it's just even give me the notes. But you have to be the one to take the courage to say, this is what and to know what you can manage, not to make promises you can't keep, not to talk about things that are completely so far out of the realm of possibility, just to take up space and talk in a meeting. It's got to be very, clear, understandable dialogue. But yeah, it's kind of boils down to courage, at least in my little world.
No, thank you. Thank you. Uh, might you share what are some of the biggest systemic barriers to creating this safe and sanitary living conditions for everyone? And how do you approach dismantling them?
Yeah, well, again, the barriers are that's the way we do it. I don't know if that gets said on Oahu very much, but I always joke that if
This
I
this
had a
is the way it's
dollar,
always been, basically,
that's
that
the
kind
way it's
of
always been. And I
right.
literally I said if I started a fund, if I had started a piggy bank where somebody put in a dollar every, I actually could retire. I mean, I would actually have enough finances to retire. Um, and so I think the systemic changes are rooted in a, a significant racial bias. And if you don't understand the history of the United States, it's kind of hard to follow some of this. So you really have to have some sort of an understanding of how the United States was formed and how it came to Hawaii and what that means, because they have again, there was no homelessness before the United States took over Hawaii. So it's a new concept here. And I still don't think it's an acceptable. It's same with the Native Americans. And, you think about all the tribes around the United States, there was no such thing as homelessness. This is a contrived financial system. And as a result, there are still people generationally who I'm thrilled to know and understand that don't subscribe to it. And I'm really grateful for that, because I don't subscribe. Even though I was born into a suburb on the mainland, I don't subscribe to the concept of homelessness. I've never understood it. Doesn't make sense to me. Um, so I think the basic changes are to really give uh, different groups opportunities where land is not an issue and that they can create community in their Ahapua style or however, and to give the reins to them and to be, like I said, lead from behind, which is what I really like to do, is to lead from behind. I was a captain on a team, and I always hung out with the people in the back that were struggling. I was like, why do I need to, the people in the front know what to do. They already got that natural thing is you got to help the people that are struggling in the back, and help them to catch up and help them to feel valued and part of a team, not just, and I've always believed that in terms of the work we're doing. So systemically, people need, Maui County needs, it has needed for just to, first of all, respect the people who are speaking up, give them resources, just like you would give an agency. And if you can do it through Share Your Mana, then we're happy to do that. We're looking into, we've always been looking into how to secure land, Juliana land maybe even, and give it, to the individuals who are, their lineage is here, and their whole being is aligned with knowing which way the wind blows and which way to put a tarp up, because they know what time of the year a wind blows a certain way and where it will be secure and where it won't. I mean, when people are this in tune with nature and the land, that's right. That to me, that's the skill of life that is lost when you're housed. When you have all these walls and you have these barriers, and you're not actually touching nature every day, you actually lose the concept of really, where value is, and community, because we have these common ways to. Uh, it's just, I think people need to have some land and they need to have autonomy. The citations and the fining of people and criminalizing them because there is no safe legal place for people to live and exist has got to stop. And as a commissioner on Healing Solutions for Homelessness, I propose that. I even just propose that the commissioners attend a sweep, because there's commissioners who've never been to a sweep and they voted it down. If you have commissioners that won't even sit and watch and witness the horror people are going through, how can they be the advocates? And so I think if you're not willing, I always say when I'm in charge, which of course I don't really want to be in charge, but a training feature is everybody has to go and stand with people when their stuff is being threatened and removed, or when they're getting cited. Go to court with people. Go see what it's like to be released with a paper bag and have nowhere to go. You walk along with that person, and then you go home and you have a nice little night's sleep in your bed. And let me see if your the way that you want to approach this changes, because I think it will, and I think it would for the better.
No, thank you. You're basically talking about giving them a reality check. Because that's
Yes.
what's, yeah, just once more that whole Wizard of Oz effect of like the ivory tower and not being able to be on the hands. So get your hands dirty a bit. That's what we're talking about here. Engage with the community. Um, so you've been involved in many community educational panels. What are some of the biggest misconceptions about social innovation and community healing that you've encountered in those spaces?
I think I'm going to maybe answer this a little differently, because something else where you just use
Yeah.
language that creates another thought, and I think an important thought. Like reality check is, I I'd love to see um, people go and live in these conditions. And a little bit more on the reality check is that every meeting I'm in with agencies, it talks about, like, even during the point in time count, the homeless line says you have to be in pairs. You can only go in during certain times of the day. And of course, there's certain times of the day when no one's going to be at their camp because they're trying to take care of their business, right? So you're never gonna you're gonna it's designed to fail essentially. But I just want people to know I have always been welcomed into like some of the most phenomenal structures, into people's cars where you have to like sit on top of things if they've got um into people who are working in the community in in roles that um you think they live in a house and they don't because they're paying child support. They don't want anyone to know they're living in their car, and yet they're public figures. And there's no way they would tell anybody that they want to pay their child support instead of living in a house. Um, I've seen all these things to be welcomed into people's uttermost truths is so expansive. Um, I'm always offered food. Everybody wanted me to spend, when the sweep at Amala, I'm way before that, even during COVID, like I had a spot, people saved a spot for me, like to sleep overnight, because sometimes I'd be there at 2 in the morning because people were getting excited. So I'd want to document that. And I didn't want to miss anything because they were telling me all these things were happening and I wasn't seeing them. So, and I remember, one of the mornings that I think I drove up at like 3 a.m. just because I was like I wanted to be there, and I fell asleep in my car, and I got a knock at like 5:45. It was in the summer, so the sun was already starting to come up, and uh, I want to say her name, and I'm sure she would be fine, but I get this plate breakfast with spam and egg and rice. She's knocking on my window. I'm asleep, drooling in my car, and she's like, hey, you need something, you need some breakfast. And she gives me this breakfast. I just started to cry. I was like, I'm so loved up in this community. And even when people are really losing their cookies, if they're frustrated, they just allow me to hug them or hold them. And it doesn't happen that much. The violence is, I think, probably no different than probably the violence that housed people experience. There's domestic violence when you're housed, there's domestic violence if you're unhoused. I do know people are in positions where they have to steal to survive because they have no other means. I get that. I totally understand it. Do I like it? No. Is it a reality? Yes. And that's why, we strive to provide everyone's, at least some of their basic needs. But I'm continuously loved up. And when people will save the best parking place for me if I'm going to spend the night. Yeah, and don't, everyone tried to be quiet. Lisa's here. We got to get some sleep. It's really, people have invited me to sleep in their tents. If I didn't want to sleep in my car, here, you could take my bed. You take my bed. I mean, the generosity is enormous, absolutely enormous. And like I said, that kind of trust, I want everyone to understand the reality check of that. And I don't want people to come down and spend time with people as like it's not a form of torture. It's actually this space of incredible kindness and joy. And is there anger, frustration, mental health issues? Of course. However, they're manageable. They've always, for me, they've been man. I'm not to say that there hasn't been times when people haven't gotten into fights and been like, you get it. Um, but it's very, very, it's not common. And if it is, it's with somebody who is really in incredible need of psychiatric help, which they're not getting. And if they did have, that could easily be eliminated. So I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on why it's really important to lean into the discomfort and to know that if it's a perception of this discomfort if you're housed. If you're not housed, it's like they don't feel, like, people don't feel this. They actually don't see that barrier. They don't feel that barrier that housed people and people in their ivory towers have created, this barrier. It doesn't exist when I'm down and I'm with everybody. I don't feel it at all. And yet when I'm with house people and they say, "Oh, what about this?" or "What about this?" or people in these ivory towers, I'm like, that's actually never been my experience. Never been. I've never had any violence. The closest thing I had to violence was somebody punched a young kid, slapped my car because he was And I don't think he even knew it was my car. He just slapped a car. He was just really, he wasn't doing well. He was psychiatrically unwell, and he slapped my car. And that was like, that's the closest thing that I've ever experienced, which is a huge misconception. And again, what that needs to, I think the more people build relationships, the more they'll see that the lack of building relationships is a way to keep this problem out of our control. Like you don't have to take responsibility for it. But as soon as you start to build these relationships, I'm like, I get excited. Like, okay, what do we do next? How can we, how can we resolve this? How do we um, make this softer and kinder for everyone?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, I answered a completely different question.
No, no, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. I kind of going back to, yeah, gotta get your hands in there. Gotta see beyond whatever is in print or in media, and you want to make a change, you gotta connect with other organizations that are doing some good work like yourself, other good people, and see how folks can come together, collaborate, to make a change. Because waiting on larger institutions sometimes isn't the way, unfortunately. So I just to kind of as we're getting close to being conscientious of time, I do appreciate your time today, and thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity to learn further from. Um, so looking back at this beautiful, incredible career, wonderful journey that you've been on. What advice would you give to someone just starting in the field of social advocacy, especially for those working with underserved populations?
If I looked back at, surround yourself with people that believe that things can change for the better. And if you can't find those people, just keep doing what you're doing and keep sifting through experiences until you start to find people, because there's a lot of people, there's brilliant people in the world doing this, and a lot of them are hidden gems. You have to go find them, you have to go digging. So always keep, a shovel handy because you're going to have to dig every day. Um, I'd say never give up on recognizing that you got to check your own biases all the time. You got to check your own. I think this, I think that. And if you can't, if you don't have, you got to you got to have someone trusted who can reflect back to you, housed or unhoused, that this is helpful. But also honor your gut. I think I honor my gut a lot, and that's really important. I think it's important to recognize expectations as maybe the biggest piece of this. And I don't, I never expected, I don't believe in a career. I don't care about having how much money. I don't know. Somehow I missed that part of my indoctrination into life, but I don't care about those things. What I do care about is just that every single day is moving something forward or not causing more harm, and just staying on the path to keeping that balance in the context of expectations. I don't, I used to have expectations, and it's different than having goals. Have goals, but you know what? Goals can go sideways and up and down and triangulate. They can go all different places. Expectations will sink you every time. I expect this to happen, or I want this to happen. That can sink you, and that, I think that causes burnout. And I'm very lucky not to have really had too much of that. I expect this, or I expect anything in my life, or I even expect a phone call back. It doesn't mean I don't have the goal of connecting with that person. It just means don't hinge everything on expectation. So that's really important. It's important to stay nourished. I'm so grateful for some of the silent retreats. They are the greatest gift you can give yourself and not have to talk to anybody or be talked to and just be and there's something that happens in that space that I don't even know how to put words to that is very expansive. So whether you do it on your own and go and sit by, in one of the forest, or you sit on a trail, you have an expansive view, or you actually just have a little room where you just play running water, or like a stream. You do that for yourself. Um, and just have fun. I don't you don't get to chance we get to have I've actually had quite a lot of fun in my life, and this work seems so heavy and so hard, and it doesn't it isn't when it's blended with fun and community, and that kind of strategy. Yeah, I think it's super important. People talk about burnout a lot. I don't, again, I don't, burnout is not, it's not an option. It's not an option for me. I understand how it happens. I intellectually, of course, understand it. I have this just belief that, I'm going to do my best and we're going to do this together. Yeah, and not to get insulted. The Four Agreements, if you haven't read the Four Agreements, you need to read not to read them, embody the Four Agreements. Don't take anything personally, do your best, have integrity. Embody those every single day. Wake up reading them and go to bed reading them. And just everything else will fall in place or not.
Thank you. That's just beautiful. And really just a wonderful reminder of like self-care, enjoying the journey as it's happening, just being present as much as possible, which is so key to everything that you do and continue to do. So I just want to thank you for joining us today. Lisa, it's such an incredible story and an ongoing story because there's more to be told still and more good work to be done. And just everything, not only yourself, but through the work of Share Your Mana, which I feel like they're one and the same, and you are Share Your Mana, and I appreciate your dedication to bridging the gap between house and unhoused. Such a unique approach to advocacy and commitment to just uplifting marginalized communities, being a voice. Uh, it's really inspiring. And so I hope I know I've been inspired, and I hope our listeners get inspired to connect as well. And I'll be sure to share the contact information for Share Your Mana. Or if you want to give it a quick plug, I believe well, we have Lisa at shareyourmana.org.
Yes.
Folks can just contact you
Yes.
to build those bridges, continue to connect, and remember that, we all have a role to play in creating our equitable world. So thank you so much for today. Greatly appreciated our conversation. And
Oh,
it's not, I know it's not over. I
you're
know we'll have many more.
can't. This has been delightful, absolutely delightful. Your insights are deeply appreciated and noted. And I will take that because I will be going in to do the women's group today. So,
Beautiful.
I'm going to tell them, yeah, about this, and they'll be excited.
Love it. Thank you again. Take good care.
Okay, mahalo
Um,
plenty.